Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're just tuning in, I'm currently in the process of recreating this 1890s ensemble, which is currently on display at the Museum of Vancouver. In my last video, I went through the process of patterning and dyeing my capelet, and if you missed that, you can click the link up above to see that video. So we are picking up right where I left off, and it is time to start beading. Well, the beading on this capelet is quite extensive. Not only is there a large swirling beaded pattern around the neckline, it also has a lot of sequins beaded throughout the majority of the capelet. Now, when I first saw this capelet in the exhibit back in March, I didn't know I was going to be recreating it, and so I didn't get as many detailed photos as I probably should have. So the plan is to try and recreate the front of the capelet to the best of my ability from the photos I have. And for the back of the capelet, I'm going to be taking some creative liberties as I don't have any photos of the back of it. So I'm more going to be just mirroring what's in the front, but also adding some design details of my own. The deadline that I have for this project is coming up very quickly, so I need to get things moving so I can actually get it done on time. So first things first, I need to copy the design. Since the capelet is a simple circle pattern, it makes it a lot easier for me to copy the design. Now with the photos in Photoshop here, I just brightened them up so I could easily trace them and see all the seam lines and get a rough idea of the scale compared to the pattern. From there, I traced out the beaded design and the sequins and the lace and everything, and with that drawn out, I had a rough idea of how I was going to be drawing the pattern for the capelet. Okay, hopefully you can see this, but I have roughly traced out my pattern onto my pattern pieces, and now I need to transfer it to my patterning tissue. So this will make it easier to transfer it over to my velvet when the time comes, because I'm hoping that I will be able to do this kind of light box style and trace my pattern onto my velvet with the tissue. We'll see how this goes. Fingers crossed. Once I had finished tracing the design, I began pinning the capelet to the frame, starting with the selvage to try and keep everything on the straight of grain. If you missed how I set up my frame, you can click the link in the description to take you to that video. Once everything was pinned, I then added running stitches around the piece, continuing to smooth as I stitched. With the first panel attached, I then placed the beading pattern on the back of the fabric and pinned it in place. From there, I traced the design to the front of the velvet using a friction pen. Now, I always recommend testing the fabric, but for some reason I didn't this time, and unfortunately it did leave some faint ghost lines, but thankfully for the most part it is covered with beads. With everything traced, it was time to add the beads. I bought 110 grams of 2mm metallic antique gold seed beads and 100 grams of 6mm metal gold sequins or bangles off Etsy. Now, I would usually link the shop down below, but unfortunately they seem to have stopped selling since I ordered them. With everything prepared, I began the process of beading the first quarter of the capelet. Now, I will say the beginning process of this was not all sunshine and roses. It took a little while to figure out a technique that worked for me, but once I did, I was able to get into a good rhythm and it became kind of relaxing. As a bit of a precaution, I did use a double length of thread just in case a single thread ever broke in the future, and I'm not sure if this is correct or a recommended technique, but it worked for me and it gave me a bit of peace of mind. The main stitch I used to attach the beads is called a beaded backstitch, and I'll leave a video below that has some clear instructions if you want to try this technique on your own projects. Now I must confess, I do not have much of a commentary planned for this part of the video, so instead I hope you'll sit back and relax and enjoy the music while I bead the capelet. I will say that if you are thinking of starting a beaded project, I definitely recommend finding, making, or buying a frame. This frame made this process so much easier, and I couldn't imagine doing it without a frame to keep everything taut. Also, a little stretching goes a long way after working on beading for a couple hours. And finally, heading into the home stretch, I had one more evening of beading to do before I finished the first quarter of the capelet. Once the main beading was done, I then added markings for the sequins across the capelet and began adding them one by one. To save on time, I decided to leave the bottom 4 inches of the capelet free of the sequins, as it would have the ruffle covering it. And with the last sequin added, the first quarter of the capelet was done. It's done! Oh my goodness, you guys, I love how this turned out. The bangles or sequins on here just catch the light beautifully. So this is the back half. I just have it pinned together right now just to make sure that everything lines up correctly, which it does, and I am so thankful for. I've got the back half, and then this is one side, the other side. I am thrilled with how these turned out. I did time myself, and I ended up spending just over 56 hours beading the capelet. So that was fun. So it was definitely a little bit time consuming, but I do love how it turned out. And it gave me a great opportunity to sit and enjoy a couple audiobooks while I was beading. So that is a major bonus. I am not 100% done the beading yet. Once the capelet pieces are sewn together, I am going to add a little bit more beading down the seam lines, but that is going to be something that you'll see in the next video. Along with today's video, I've also released a 2-hour sewing video that is just showing me beading the capelet in real time. So if you are wanting something just very soothing and relaxing, then I recommend you check out this video right here. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're just tuning in, don't forget to click the playlist up above or down in the description to see all the videos that have come before. I'll see you next time. Bye!